welcome to Squib Kick Radio. This is Squib Around the CFL Episode 1. I'm your host, Riley Pollack, and we start Episode 1 on the West Coast with the BC Lions. The last time the CFL went in 2019, the Lions went 5-13 and finished last in the West Division. Receiver Brian Burnham was the team's most outstanding player nominee in the 2019 season. He was second in the league in receiving yards and touchdowns with 1,492 yards and 11 TDs. Mike Riley will once again be under center for the Leos, who look to improve after a season off on a tough season in 2019. Today, to help me run through some more Lions talk, I have host of the BC Lions Den podcast, Brian Worishin. Brian, it's nice to talk some CFL football with someone on this podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thanks for coming on. There's been not a whole lot of talk about the CFL besides free agency, except when we heard some news about a possible merger with the XFL, and I don't want to talk a whole lot about this, but I'll get it out of the way early. What's kind of your stance on the whole talks of a possible merger between these two leagues?
I'm pretty cautious about it. You know, I really don't want to jump to any conclusions, but I do have a fear of losing the Canadian game and Canadian rules, and you know, I'm a fan of Canadian football because I find it to be, a more exciting brand of football, and I've been a fan for over 40 years. So I would hate for the CFL to sell itself out to the XFL and just kind of go to four-down rules and just lose all the history and tradition, that the CFL has compiled over 100-plus years. And, it's the only uniquely Canadian league we have, and I hope that gets maintained in any possible discussions with the XFL.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I'm super against changing the rules. It's just something that I stand very firmly on. I think that there's a way to join, I guess, without changing the CFL game. I feel like maybe the XFL needs the CFL more than the CFL needs the XFL, but then again, I don't know how dire the situation is with the CFL right now. I'm sure it's not great after not playing for a season and probably pushing back season number 2.
And I think that the XFL has always prided itself on being a little different, and I don't think any four-down football league is going to fly in the United States. So I think now is the opportunity, if they want to be different, to bring the Canadian game to the United States, play by our rules, and maybe see if American fans can catch on to that, because as far as I'm concerned, the Americans only care about high school, college, and the NFL. So I don't think any other four-down league down there is going to have any success. So bring them something different. If they want to be part of our game, then all the power to them. Yeah,
that's where I'm at as well. I think that, I'm okay with another U.S. CFL experiment as long as it's strictly CFL rules, but I guess we'll just have to see what goes on there, as we don't know a whole lot of information, but it does seem like it's more than just talking. As The Rock has mentioned the CFL on Twitter and made a video about it, it seems like it's more than just general discussion. So I'm interested to see. We haven't heard a whole lot from the commissioner on the situation, so it's tough to really know what's going on. But it's something that is seems to be in the forefront of the CFL right now. Hopefully, it goes the way me and you seem to want it to go. Before we get to Lions talk, where are you on the start of a CFL season? Are you optimistic we get a season this year? Do you think it'll be delayed? I mean, I'm under the impression it's probably a Labor Day start, but what do you think is going to go on with the league this year?
Yeah, it's tough to say. A couple weeks ago, I was pretty optimistic that things were going to get off on time, but you look at the situation in Vancouver here, just with the Vancouver Canucks. 20 of those players now have this new Brazilian variant. The Canucks have been shut right down. So we're going through a third wave here in Vancouver, and I'm not sure that, fans are going to be allowed in the stadiums anytime soon here, which is a pretty crucial part to the CFL's business plan. So, it's really, really tough to say right now. I mean, more people are getting vaccinated all the time, but how effective are these vaccines against these new variants? We don't know. There's just so many moving parts right now, and it's really, really tough to predict, when and if the league is going to be able to play this year. So I believe there's some CFL meetings. I think I read this morning this year amongst the Board of Governors, and possibly talking about reducing ratios and stuff like that already. So that's maybe another hint about what's coming down the pipe with the XFL. But I'm not sure. It's anybody's guess right now, and it just depends on how this third wave is going. But I know in Ontario and BC and Alberta, it's on the rise, and it's pretty scary. It's getting pretty old for everybody, and everybody's got to buckle down and keep up the fight here, because it's getting bad again. So a couple weeks ago I was pretty optimistic. Today, not so much. We'll just have to see how things go.
Yeah, I was really hoping that we could get a full season in, but it just, with how everything's going here and the vaccine rollout and all that kind of stuff, I think it's more likely a 8-9 season Labor Day start, something like that, which I'm fine with as long as we get some form of football this year.
Yeah.
But yeah, it kind of seems just like play it by ear thing. But let's move on to the Lions. I really want to talk about that with you, as you're one of my favorite follows on the team on all of Twitter. So it's been a while since the Lions have played, but judging from free agency, do you feel like this team might stack up a little bit better on the field this year against the West specifically, assuming we do have a season compared to what we saw of them in 2019?
Yeah, I think they've made some nice additions, particularly with Riker Matthews coming in at the tackle spot. They've kind of solidified that offensive line with Joel Figueroa on the other side, and they're going with some guys who were probably their best offensive linemen 2 years ago. So in the middle of that line, so I think that protection of Mike Riley is key, and I think they've taken steps to address that. I really like what they've done in the secondary, bringing in guys like Marcus Sales and the guys they had in place before. So there's still some questions along the defensive line. But they haven't had any name signings in that area, but they have brought in some guys that they're excited about. We'll have to see how that pans out in training camp and see if they have improved there. But Mike Riley says he's the healthiest he's ever been after this long break, so that's a good sign as well. He took a pounding 2 years ago, and hopefully the Lions have addressed that, and he can stay upright a little more, and the receiving core is good as well. So I think that there's some nice pieces there. Lucky Whitehead coming in as a returner and a possible option at receiver as well. So that's some speed in the return game. So there's a lot of nice pieces there, but we're a long ways from kind of looking at the roster and seeing how it's all going to shake down. But they have taken some steps to improve. So technically, yeah, they should be a better team.
Yeah, it was a tough season for them after all the hype around getting Mike Riley. The O-line just couldn't really keep him upright. He was running around a lot that season, and the O-line did improve, it felt like, after the coaching change at the O-line position.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a tough division, and hopefully BC can be a little bit more competitive in it if we do get a 2021 season. What would you consider the biggest addition and subtraction in terms of player in the free agency in this offseason?
As far as subtractions go, I can't really think of a guy who was a big loss. I mean, Aaron Grimes is one guy that comes to mind, but
yeah.
When they signed Marcus Sales, I think the writing was on the wall there. They couldn't keep everybody under this new reduced salary cap, and he wasn't willing to take less to stay here, so he's back in Edmonton. That would probably be the biggest loss, but I think they've replaced that with a guy like Marcus Sales. As far as additions go, I have to go back to Riker Matthews, because that's a key position on any football club, is to have two solid bookend tackles, and I think the Lions have that now, and that should really help protect Mike Riley. So I think that's got to be the biggest addition.
Yeah, for sure. That O-line was definitely the biggest need there for the Lions. So Mike Riley should be able to toss that ball around to guys like Brian Burnham, who second in the league in receiving yards last time we saw him, and hopefully he can still be that elite player that we've seen, one of the top receivers in the CFL, if not the best receiver in the CFL in my opinion. So it'd be nice to keep Mike Riley upright and let him find his stud receivers. Would you consider that the best position group on the team, the receiving core?
I would think so, and probably the secondary is right up there as well. and TJ Lee back there, and a few other guys that have some experience. So the secondary and probably the offensive line are going to be the biggest improvements. One area where it's pretty interesting with the Lions is both Brandon Rutley retired and John White moved on. But it looks like they're going to kind of go with a Canadian backfield this year with Jamel Lyles and some other names are escaping me right now, but they got a lot of Canadians on their roster at running back. So it looks like they're going to make that a national spot. And same with the linebacker position, Bo Lacumbo and Adam Konar. And, they're going national in those spots, at least to start. By the looks of the roster, that's how they plan to go. So that frees up some options to use some imports on the offensive line if they need to, defensive line, and in the secondary. So they're composing their roster a little differently than when Ed Hervey was here, but by all accounts, I think it's an improvement so far. But we'll have to see how it all shakes out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess just one more tough one on the Lions front. We know that the attendance has been an issue for the Lions and the Argos and Montreal. And I remember when I was growing up, BC would be absolutely packed for games, like 56,000 people kind of thing. I'm not sure that we're ever going to get back to there in any market, but what can the Lions do to increase maybe their in-person attendance and grow the general fan base? I assume you have some ideas, as I'm sure a lot of BC Lions fans do.
Yeah, I get asked this question probably more than any other question when I go on a show, and it's a really complicated and tough thing to answer because, people that don't live in Vancouver don't really understand the market here. Vancouver, for one, is a very expensive place to live, and BC Place is downtown Vancouver. A lot of people that used to live in the city have now moved out of the city because they can't afford to buy homes within Vancouver proper. So you have people living in places like Abbotsford and Chilliwack and Langley, and anybody who's driven around Vancouver knows that we have one highway into the city, and one accident can put that highway into gridlock. So I think a lot of people, when you look at the TV numbers for the BC Lions locally, they're huge. They get way more than MLS, Whitecaps, viewership. So people are interested in the BC Lions. They're interested in the CFL. But the bottom line is it's ticket prices, transportation, parking. It all adds up to a pretty expensive night. And when you're working in the city and then you got to go home and grab your kids in Abbotsford or Langley or Chilliwack and then fight your way to get back downtown again, it makes for a long day and a pretty stressful day for a lot of people. So, with all the games on TV, a lot of people are sitting at home with their 55-inch high-definition television, and they don't have to pay for parking. They don't have to pay $10 for a beer. So people are watching. They're just not watching in the stadium, and the Lions have to find ways to make it easier for fans to get in the stadiums. I think, having games on weekends in markets like BC and Toronto, where it's difficult to get downtown at the best of times, would help both teams. It would give fans more time during the day to make a day of it and head down to a game. So there's all sorts of different factors involved, including that Vancouver is a multicultural city now, and as is Toronto. And people in Saskatchewan don't really understand that when I say that to them. There's all sorts of different cultures here that have never been exposed to Canadian football, and it's not like soccer, where soccer is a world game where everybody, it's played all over the world, and just soccer fans of all different cultures. Football fans are different. Canadian football fans are different. And if you haven't been exposed to the game, it's tough to get them to come out to a game. So I think the Lions have to work with the different cultures, the Chinese culture in the city, the South Asian culture in the city, and really try and draw on those groups of fans that are, have yet to be exposed to the CFL, get them into the stadium, whether they have to reduce ticket prices, have special deals for those types of groups. It's a very complicated problem, but first of all, we got to get back on the field. First of all, they got to start winning some games and get some excitement going in the city about the Lions. And I think we can probably get up back up to the 30,000 mark per game if everybody does the work. And there's a lot of work to be done, but I think it can be done. It's not going to be an overnight fix. It's going to take maybe 5 to 10 years if everybody does all the work and you can get those people interested. You got to bring your kids out to games, and then those kids have to bring their friends to games when they get a bit older, and then eventually they'll bring their children to games. So that's how I became a fan. That's how many of us became fans of the CFL, and I think the CFL's lost a couple generations here through a lack of marketing and a lack of creativity in their marketing.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Thank you. That's what I was looking for, and I knew it wasn't just one problem, and I think you handled that very well and informed me very well, so thank you very much. Just one more question from you. I need a way too early Grey Cup final prediction based off paper. What do you got? Who's the winner this year if you had to pick on, April 6th, 2021?
Yeah, at this point, I really like what the Edmonton Eskimos have done. I think they've put together a pretty solid roster there in Edmonton, and Toronto has signed a whole boatload of people, so we're going to have to see how that shakes down. They can't possibly afford all those guys, so I think after training camp's done, there's going to be some pretty good players available coming out of the Toronto system, but I think at this point, I'd probably go with the Argos and the Eskimos just on paper, but it's way too early for that kind of prediction.
Absolutely. That would be a classic matchup, and good for the city of Toronto, probably.
Well, I hope so. They've had a couple of Grey Cups in there recently, and it hasn't helped that much. But
that is fair.
That's another market that I'm not going to crap on too much because it's very similar to our market where we have a lot of the same challenges. So.
Well, Brian, that's pretty much all I have here. Thank you so much for hopping on with us on Squib Kick Radio today, just to get the CFL juices flowing a little bit and being part of our first episode of the Around the CFL podcast.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks.
Bye now. There you go. That was Brian Warishin of the BC Lions Den podcast. Thanks again to him for his time and his dedication to the CFL game. That will do it for episode 1 of Squib Around the CFL. We're going coast to coast, 10 episodes in 10 weeks. Next week, we're going to talk to someone from the Turf District podcast in Edmonton. Thanks again, and as always, for listening. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Squib Kick Radio, and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I'll talk to you next week for episode 2.
I got you stuck off the realness. Think not, this shit's too hot. Too hot. Too hot. Rock you in your face. Dab your brain with your nose bone. I'm a vampire walking on the surface of the sun.